People always say the woods are peaceful until you're alone in a cabin and the silence starts to feel like something watching you. Tonight, you're going to hear 3 true stories about desolate cabins in the woods where the quiet hides things far darker than you could imagine. The night swallowed the forest whole, and in that darkness, I heard something I wasn't supposed to hear. Breathing just beyond the wall. I had been alone for a week in the abandoned cabin, nestled miles deep in those forgotten woods. The place was rough, a single room with peeling paint and a fireplace that barely worked, but it was exactly what I needed to disconnect. No internet, no phone signal, just me and the quiet crackle of the fire. It was supposed to be peaceful. Instead, it became the longest week of my life. The first few nights were uneventful, the deep silence almost comforting. But on the 5th night, I woke just before dawn. The cold had crept under the thin blanket, making my skin crawl. I sat up and noticed the moonlight pooling on the opposite wall, and then my heart nearly stopped. There was a face pressed against the glass, a man's face, pale and almost ghost-like, staring straight at me with hollow eyes. I froze, blanketing myself in shock and disbelief. But the strangest part was the wall itself. When I'd arrived, that side of the cabin had no window. It was just empty, weathered wood. I'd even checked the layout 100 times in my head. It was impossible. My breath caught in my throat, and for a moment, I thought maybe I was still dreaming. I blinked, but the face didn't move. The man just stood there, unmoving, staring. Even the moonlight didn't seem to touch him fully. It was like his presence belonged to another dimension. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands, but as I shone the flashlight to the window, it vanished. Just like that, the wooden wall was solid again. No window, no face, only the quiet rustling of the trees outside. I spent the next hours tangled in sheets, eyes darting, ears straining for any sound. Every creak of the cabin felt like footsteps. I felt watched, hunted, though I knew there was nowhere anyone could have come from in this remote stretch of wilderness. The next day, I packed up and left before daylight. I told myself it was a hallucination fueled by loneliness and exhaustion. But something stayed with me, a chilling certainty that what I saw was no trick of the mind. That night, the man was out there, somewhere beyond that impossibly white window, waiting. And the cabin? It wasn't as empty as I thought. The knock came once, sharp and clear, breaking the deafening silence of the snowbound night. And then nothing. I was alone in the cabin, miles from the nearest town. A relentless snowstorm had started late afternoon and buried the world outside in a thick, suffocating white. The forest, usually alive with noises, was eerily still. Inside, the small fire struggled against the cold, its flickering light casting giant shadows on the wooden walls. I had planned this weekend as an escape, just me and the solitude of the frozen forest. But now, as the temperature dropped and the wind howled outside, unease seeped in. The power was out, and my only warmth was the old wood stove I kept feeding in between long stretches of silence. Just as I settled back into my rickety armchair, a sudden knock echoed from the front door. It was a single, deliberate knock, almost polite in its timing. My heart jumped, suspicion pinching at me. No one else was supposed to be out here, especially not tonight. Snow was piling up all around, and the road was impassable. I moved cautiously toward the door, peering through the frosted window beside it. The snow lay untouched, not a single footprint anywhere near the cabin. No sign of anyone who could have come or gone. My breath fogged the glass as I tried to see clearly, but all I caught was the swirling snow and bare branches scraping against the cabin's siding. The isolation suddenly felt suffocating. I called out, but my voice was swallowed by the storm. I debated opening this door, every instinct screaming against it. I grabbed my phone, but there was no signal, no help to call. The fire sputtered, casting brief, dancing shadows that looked like pale faces watching me. Minutes felt like hours as I waited, the silence spreading heavy. Another knock never came, but the unease settled deep in my bones. The knowledge that something had been on the other side, close enough to knock, yet invisible in the snow. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak, every whisper of wind made me jump. I left with first light, swearing never to return. The snow outside was still pristine. The visitor never left any footprints. It vanished. The cabin, the only landmark in these endless woods, simply disappeared into thin air. And when it came back, it wasn't quite the same. We'd been hiking all day, enjoying the quiet of the forest and the fresh air, eagerly looking forward to returning to the cabin we'd rented for the weekend. We'd spent years going there, a small, weathered wooden cabin surrounded by towering pine trees, tucked so far from civilization that it felt like another world. But when we crested the ridge and finally saw the clearing where it should have been, it was empty. Not a trace of the cabin. No wheel tracks, no fire pit, nothing but grass and dirt under the shifting sunlight. We stared in disbelief, exchanging uneasy glances. Maybe we were off by some distance? We searched the clearing's edges thoroughly, but the cabin wasn't anywhere to be found. It was like it had been erased. Confused and a little spooked, we argued about what to do next. Should we head back or wait? Deciding it must be a trick of light or our tired minds playing games, we set up camp nearby. As dusk settled, the forest noises grew louder, the hoot of an owl, the rustle of unseen animals, but something felt wrong. Hours later, under a sky smeared with stars, one of us spotted it, the cabin. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the familiar structure emerged in the clearing, solid and real. The windows glowed faintly in the dark, the creaky wooden porch inviting yet cold. We moved closer, but something about the air felt thick and suffocating. The smell of old wood and pine was sharp, but mingled with a faint metallic tang. Our footsteps sounded too loud and too unnervingly hollow. Inside, the cabin looked untouched, yet time seemed off. A few belongings had shifted. A chair was turned oddly, like someone had been waiting. We called out, but there was no answer, just the quiet thudding of our own hearts. That night, sleep evaded us completely. Shadows moved in the corners, and whispers seemed to crackle beneath the wind. By morning, the sun was high, and the cabin was gone again. Only the empty clearing remained, the grass flattened where it had stood. We left immediately, never to return. Sometimes when I close my eyes, I can still see that cabin flickering on the edge of reality. There, then not, like a cruel mirage refusing to let us forget.